The jungle was alive with gunfire, the kind that doesn't echo, it swallows. Sergeant First Class Robert L. Howard was on the ground, blood running down both arms, his rifle smashed in half by a grenade that had gone off a little too close for comfort. Half blind from the blast, half deaf from the gunships, and 100% sure that if he didn't move, he'd die. So he moved, because Robert Howard didn't wait for permission to live. He clawed through elephant grass that tore at his uniform like barbed wire, dragging a wounded teammate behind him. Every inch forward felt like wrestling a gorilla underwater. Bullets cracked overhead like popcorn in a hot skillet, but Howard kept crawling, shouting for the rest of his men. If pain bothered him, it never got a word in edgewise. And that was just a Tuesday. Long before the Medal of Honor or the whispers in bars and briefings, Howard was a dirt poor kid from Opelika, Alabama, the kind of place where you learn to fight before you learn to drive. Born in 1939, one of 9 children, he spent more time hauling cotton than dreaming. When other boys had baseballs, Howard had rocks, and an arm strong enough to make you regret teasing him about it. Poverty didn't build character, it built endurance, and Howard had that in spades. At 17, he joined the Army, partly out of patriotism, mostly because it had food. The 101st Airborne took him in and quickly realized he was equal parts athlete and mule. Tough wasn't a compliment around Howard, it was a job description. He didn't smoke, didn't drink much, but he'd fight anyone who needed a reminder that gravity still worked. He jumped out of planes, slogged through swamps, and volunteered for every miserable assignment offered. Not because he was fearless, but because the worst that could happen was dying, and he'd been doing a fine job avoiding that so far. The Army noticed. He rose fast. The kind of NCO every officer wanted, and every new recruit feared. Direct, relentless, allergic to nonsense. Men later said following him into combat felt less like bravery and more like inevitability. By the mid-1960s, Vietnam was turning from a conflict into a meat grinder. Howard won, of course. He wasn't built for paperwork or peacetime. He landed with the 101st, but quickly volunteered for something even crazier. A shadow outfit few had heard of and fewer survived. The Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, Studies and Observations Group, MACV-SOG. The Black Ops of Black Ops, the kind of missions that didn't come with guarantees or even coordinates you could admit existed. When other soldiers talked about courage, Howard treated it like small talk. He didn't brag, he didn't have to. Men who came back from missions with him did the bragging. He just cleaned his weapon, packed his gear, and waited for the next flight into hell. In a war full of paper heroes and confused politicians, Robert Howard was something rare, a professional at surviving what no one else could. He wasn't the biggest or the fastest or even the angriest. He was just the last one to quit. By 1967, he had already bled more than most men could imagine and volunteered for a job that would make sure he kept doing it. The jungle hadn't beaten him yet, and the enemy hadn't figured out how. That would change soon, or at least it would try. Because in Vietnam, death worked overtime, and Robert Howard was about to start taking it personally. If the regular war in Vietnam was chaos, SOG was the backstage version. Darker, quieter, and full of things the public wasn't supposed to see. On paper, MACV-SOG didn't exist. Its missions weren't logged, its borders didn't matter, and its operators didn't officially breathe, which made it the perfect home for someone like Robert Howard. He'd already been through the ringer with the 101st, but SOG was a different animal entirely. Their job was simple to describe and nearly impossible to survive. Slip across borders into Laos and Cambodia, find the enemy's hidden supply routes, blow them up, and get out before the entire North Vietnamese army showed up to turn you into fertilizer. 6-man teams dropped hundreds of miles into enemy-held jungle with nothing but radios, rifles, and a polite promise that maybe the helicopters would come back for them. Howard fit right in, like a bad idea wearing dog tags. He wasn't reckless, he was methodical, calculating, and mean in all the right ways. He learned quickly that the jungle didn't care about rank or training. It cared about silence, patience, and how long you could lie motionless while ants explored your eyelids. MACV-SOG didn't look like the war on television. No massed assaults, no front lines, just small teams sneaking through triple canopy jungle thick enough to drown sound. The air smelled of rain, rot, and cordite. You didn't walk through it, you swam through it. Howard's team would insert at dawn, usually by helicopter, engines screaming over a valley that seemed calm right up until it tried to kill you. The pilot hovered just long enough for the men to jump, then vanished. After that, it was all quiet and sweat and waiting for the inevitable ambush. They carried enough firepower to make a supply clerk cry. CAR-15 rifles, M79 grenade launchers, claymores, radios, and more ammo than sense. Each American worked with Montagnard tribesmen, fierce local fighters who knew the land better than the map makers did. Communication was half English, half hand signals, and half luck. The life expectancy of a SOG recon man wasn't measured in years, it was measured in missions. Most teams didn't last 10. Some didn't last 1. Howard kept signing up. When asked why, he'd shrug, "Someone's got to do it." He said it like a plumber fixing a burst pipe. Grim, necessary, not worth applause. Humor in SOG was darker than jungle night. Men joked about their odds because facing them straight on would break anyone. Howard matched that tone perfectly. "If we get killed out here," he told one teammate, "don't worry, the paperwork says we weren't even born." It was gallows humor polished to a mirror shine. His early missions read like suicide notes written in advance. Drop zones too hot, radio contact spotty, extraction uncertain. But somehow he kept coming back, often hauling wounded men with him. Word spread. This guy didn't panic. He didn't shout. He just acted. When bullets started flying, Howard moved through the chaos like gravity didn't apply. He wasn't immune to fear, nobody was, but he compressed it into motion. Teammates said that when things went bad, his eyes went cold and steady, like a switch flipping from man to mission. Fear became logistics, survival became routine. It wasn't glory that drove him, it was responsibility. He led men as if losing one would be a personal insult. Day after day in a war that erased names faster than it created them, Howard kept his men alive by refusing any other outcome. By 1967, the whispers in camp agreed. If you were going into hell, you wanted Howard on your flank. The rest of the Army fought by the book. Howard made new pages as he went. And one humid afternoon, deep in the highlands, that reputation would be tested in a fight brutal enough to earn him his first nomination for the Medal of Honor. By the time 1967 rolled around, Howard had already collected more scars than birthdays. SOG had a way of aging men in months, not years. And somewhere out near the Laotian border, his luck and legend collided for the first time. It was supposed to be a simple recon. Sneak in, verify an enemy buildup, and get out. Simple if you ignored that it involved dropping a handful of men into a jungle, crawling with entire battalions of North Vietnamese regulars. Howard led the team because nobody else volunteered fast enough. They hit the ground at dawn. The air was still, humid enough to chew. For the first few hours it went textbook. Quiet movement, distant artillery rumble, a few radio bursts from command that actually made sense. Then, as always, the jungle decided it had been too quiet for too long. The ambush came without warning. 1 minute Howard's point man was signaling a possible trail ahead. The next, the world turned into a blender full of bullets. Automatic fire ripped through the trees, shredding leaves and men alike. The first burst dropped 2 Montagnards instantly. The second hit Howard square in the chest plate and knocked him on his back, the impact punching the breath out of him like a mule kick. He rolled, grabbed his CAR-15, and started firing through the brush. His voice cut through the chaos like gravel on steel. "Get up! Move left! Left!" He crawled forward, pulling one of the wounded by the harness, bullets snapping so close they tugged at his uniform. A grenade exploded near the tree line, showering him with dirt and metal. His sleeve caught fire, and he beat it out with the same hand holding his rifle. To the men still alive, it looked like he wasn't human. more like some machine designed for punishment, covered in blood and smoke, but somehow still shouting orders. Howard pulled the team back into a small depression, threw smoke grenades for cover, and began calling in airstrikes. The radio operator had been hit, so Howard took over, his voice calm and clipped as if ordering lunch. 2-5, this is 1-6. We are engaged. Heavy contact. Danger close. Marking position. Purple smoke. Bring it. The sky answered with napalm and cannon fire. The jungle screamed. When the air cleared, the NVA regrouped. They always did. Howard reloaded, checked his wounded, and made the decision that probably saved the survivors. Counterattack. It sounded insane. Wounded, outnumbered, low on ammo, but the man couldn't spell retreat, even if you spotted him the consonants. He charged back toward the enemy line, firing in short bursts, yelling for his men to flank left. They followed because following him was easier than explaining why you didn't. The counterattack stunned the enemy long enough for the air cover to return. Helicopters thundered overhead, spraying minigun fire that chewed the treetops into sawdust. Howard moved through the smoke and chaos like a man possessed, dragging another wounded soldier by the collar towards the extraction zone. The helicopter hovered a few feet above the trees, the door gunner firing non-stop. Howard tossed the wounded aboard, then turned back for more. By the time the last man was loaded, Howard had taken shrapnel in both legs and a bullet crease across his neck. He climbed in only after everyone else, leaving a trail of blood and mud up the skid. Inside the chopper, one of the medics tried to get him to lay down. Howard brushed him off. "Save it for someone dying," he said, then passed out cold. Back at base, when the smoke settled and the reports started circulating, the numbers didn't make sense. The odds had been unwinnable. Howard's actions, organizing, counterattacking, rescuing, were textbook Medal of Honor material. His commanding officer put the paperwork forward. Then it hit a wall. The mission had technically taken place somewhere the United States wasn't supposed to be, which meant it couldn't officially exist, which meant the Medal of Honor recommendation was quietly reconsidered and downgraded to a Distinguished Service Cross. Howard didn't complain. He just shrugged and got back to work. Medals were nice, but they didn't stop bullets. He joked about it once, half smiling through a mouth still sore from the blast. "Guess I should have asked for a hall pass before getting shot." In SOG, stories like this were whispered, half in admiration and half in disbelief. A man surviving 3 ambushes in a single mission was rare enough. A man volunteering to go back out after that was unheard of. But that's what he did. He spent the next weeks healing, arguing with the medics to get cleared, and planning the next recon run. The brass couldn't stop him, not that they wanted to. Men like Howard were too valuable, too few. The scars from that mission would stay with him, physically and otherwise. He'd learned that sometimes you could do everything right, fight like a demon, save half a dozen lives, and still get told it technically didn't happen. It didn't make him bitter, it made him efficient. The next time the war came calling, he was ready, and it wouldn't take long. In a place where maps were written in pencil and missions ended in smoke, Robert Howard was about to earn another nomination and another scar, before the ink on the first one had even dried. By the time his wounds from the first ambush had turned to scars, Robert Howard was already bored. The hospital in Da Nang wasn't built for men like him. It was built for people who stayed in bed. He didn't. As soon as the stitches stopped bleeding, he started haunting the operations tent, volunteering for whatever nightmare was next on the board. The nightmare came in the form of another cross-border recon, this time deep inside Laos. The mission was simple on paper: locate a missing SOG team and extract any survivors. In reality, it meant walking into an area so saturated with enemy troops that maps were useless and helicopters barely survived long enough to drop you off. The team assembled at dawn. Howard, still bandaged and walking with a limp, looked more like a brawler after a bad weekend than a special operator. Nobody said a word about it. In SOG, limping just meant you've been productive lately. They went in low and fast, 2 helicopters skimming treetops, rotor wash scattering leaves like confetti at a funeral. As the first bird banked over the LZ, gunfire erupted from 3 sides. The jungle exploded in muzzle flashes. Howard's pilot shouted something over the radio that ended in "taking fire," and that was the cue. Before the helicopter even touched down, Howard jumped. His boots hit the dirt just as the chopper's windshield cracked under AK fire. The air was instantly thick with the metallic smell of gunpowder and blood. The rest of his team piled out behind him, dragging packs heavy with ammo and explosives. They hadn't moved 20 yards before the ambush hit. The enemy wasn't probing. They were already on top of them. Automatic fire tore through the trees and grenades thumped into the mud like angry footsteps. Howard dropped flat, returning fire with bursts so fast they sounded mechanical. Within minutes, 2 men were down and the radio operator was hit. Howard crawled to him, ripped open the man's pack, and grabbed the handset. Break, this is Recon 1-6. We are engaged, heavy contact, grid 0771. We need air now." He kept talking while a bullet tore through his antenna and another snapped past his ear close enough to part his hair. The pilot on the other end said it would take 10 minutes. Howard looked around at his dwindling ammo and muttered, "We've got about 9. Then came the grenade. It landed behind a tree root just to his right, too close for luck. Howard rolled onto his side, trying to shove one of the montagnards away, but the blast still caught him. Shrapnel punched into his thigh and shoulder, hot and deep. He didn't scream. He just looked down at the blood pooling in his boot and muttered, "Well, that's inconvenient." He kept firing. The enemy was closing in, and the wounded man next to him was barely conscious. Howard slung him over one shoulder, his bad shoulder, and started crawling toward a shallow creek bed that might offer cover. Bullets snapped past like hornets drunk on adrenaline. He slipped once, fell face first into the mud, and came up grinning. "Free camouflage," he growled. The air cover finally arrived, a pair of A-1 Sky Raiders that rolled in low, dropping napalm in a curtain of orange fire. The heat hit like an oven door opening. Howard held his position, using the chaos to drag another man into the creek bed. When one of the pilots radioed to confirm the strike zone, Howard keyed the mic and said, "If you can see me, you're too damn close." When the planes banked away, the jungle was on fire. Charred trees fell like dominoes, and the smell of burning vegetation mixed with the sticky sweetness of explosives. Howard checked his ammo, half a magazine, and his men, half conscious. He made the call that only lunatics and heroes made. "We're not waiting for exfil. We're getting to them." They moved uphill toward where the missing team's beacon had last transmitted. Every step was agony. His leg throbbed like someone had replaced the muscle with hot coals. Still he led from the front, crawling, stumbling, dragging the wounded. When they finally found the missing men, there were only 2 survivors left, both barely hanging on. Howard took one look, spat in the dirt, and said, "All right, boys, let's earn our pay." He organized the wounded into a huddle, set up a defensive perimeter, and called in another airstrike right on top of their position. It was the only way to clear enough space for an extraction bird to land. The gunships rolled in with miniguns spinning, and Howard popped colored smoke for marking. "Purple," he told them. "That's me. Everything not purple, kill it." The extraction came in hard. The first chopper took hits immediately, sparks flying off the fuselage. Howard loaded the wounded, then turned back for one last scan. That hesitation saved a man who had fallen behind the line, bleeding out under a bush. Howard sprinted, if you could call what he was doing sprinting, grabbed him by the collar, and hauled him 50 yards through the mud and incoming fire. When he finally climbed aboard the helicopter, his arms gave out. The crew chief had to yank him by his vest. As they lifted off, tracers streaked past the open door, close enough to light the cabin red. Howard leaned out, empty rifle in hand, and spat into the jungle. Back at base, the debrief sounded like fiction. Dozens of enemy dead, every American extracted alive. His commander filled out another Medal of Honor recommendation. The language was straightforward, extraordinary heroism in the face of overwhelming odds. And once again, it went nowhere. The operation had taken place across the border. Politically inconvenient. Another downgrade, this time a silver star. Howard barely reacted. He just asked when the next rotation was leaving. One of the officers tried to talk him into a stateside posting, told him he'd done enough. Howard looked at the man like he'd spoken a foreign language. As long as they're still out there, he said, there's work to do. It wasn't false modesty, it was policy. The rest of SOG noticed. The man who should have been in recovery was already checking his gear for the next mission. He wasn't chasing medals, he was chasing men left behind. And somewhere in the unending noise of that war, the universe took note, because it wasn't finished with Robert Howard yet. The next time fate tried to kill him, it would have to bring more ammunition. The war was running out of names for the same kind of hell. Laos, Cambodia, Ashaw Valley, it didn't matter. Each mission was just another set of coordinates with a death wish attached. Robert Howard had stopped counting long ago, but this one was different. An American Green Beret had gone missing in the Ashaw, one of the nastiest pieces of real estate in Southeast Asia. The jungle there was vertical, the weather hateful, and the enemy population roughly equal to the mosquito population, which is to say biblical. MACV-SOG wanted him back. Howard didn't hesitate. The team assembled before dawn, 14 men, half Americans, half Montagnards. They'd be inserted by helicopter into an area crawling with NVA regulars. Officially, the mission brief called it a reconnaissance in force. Unofficially, it was a recovery operation that assumed they'd need body bags. Howard checked his gear with the precision of a man counting last breaths. He joked with the door gunner before takeoff, something about frequent flyer miles. The man laughed nervously. Nobody ever knew if Howard was kidding. The helicopter lifted into a sky the color of wet steel. Fog hugged the treetops, hiding both beauty and danger. The pilot followed the valley contours until the radio crackled. 2 minutes out. Everyone tensed. Then the world exploded. Automatic fire ripped through the airframe. Tracers tore past the open doors. The pilot shouted, taking hits, before banking hard. Howard didn't wait for an invitation. He jumped. He hit the ground just as a grenade went off nearby. The blast threw him backward, filled his mouth with dirt, and shredded his weapon. Shrapnel peppered his face and hands. For just a few seconds, everything went white noise, just ringing and heat. Then instincts took over. He rolled, found a new rifle from a fallen Montagnard, and started returning fire. The jungle around them was alive. NVA everywhere, closing in fast. The team leader went down, chest hit bad. Howard crawled to him, tried to stop the bleeding, realized it was hopeless. He looked up, eyes hard, and took command. Form on me, keep low. Men obeyed automatically. In the chaos, Howard moved like something primal, half crawling, half sprinting. He pulled one wounded man out of the open, then another. When his hands stopped working from blood loss, he used his elbows. The radio operator was dead, but the set still functioned. Howard keyed the mic. We are in heavy contact, surrounded, need air, danger close. The answer came through static. Confirm your position. Howard looked around at the burning foliage and bodies, exactly where it's loudest. He started marking targets for air support with smoke grenades, purple and orange plumes cutting through the haze. The gunships rolled in, miniguns roaring, napalm turning the treetops into molten rain. The blast wave pushed him backward. He barely noticed. When the first airstrike ended, the NVA surged again. Howard felt something punch through his leg. Another bullet carved across his shoulder. He stayed upright out of sheer spite. We're not done yet, he growled, as if talking to death itself. They fell back into a small rise, a patch of high ground that wasn't much, but had decent visibility. Howard organized the survivors into a circle, handed out remaining ammo, and set claymores. When they come, make it expensive. Night came fast. Rain followed. The kind of downpour that turned blood into mud and made rifles hiss with steam. Howard crawled from man to man, checking wounds, redistributing ammunition, whispering encouragement that sounded more like orders. You hold that line. I'll hold this one. Nobody quits. The enemy attacked 3 times that night. Each wave got closer, and each time Howard met them head on. firing until the barrel smoked. Between bursts, he called artillery on his own coordinates. "We're all close," he told the operator, "so make it count." Somewhere around midnight, he crawled over to one of the Montagnards who'd lost an eye but kept fighting. The man asked through broken English why Howard didn't stop moving. Howard just grinned, teeth bright against the grime, "Because they ain't stopped shooting." By dawn, the hillside was littered with empty magazines and bodies, most of them not friendly. The air stank of cordite, rain, and death. Helicopters came back through the morning mist, searching for smoke. Howard popped the last of his grenades, stood half exposed in the open, waving them in. Gunfire stitched the dirt around his boots. He ignored it, guiding the birds in like a man parking cars at the gates of hell. The first helicopter touched down. Howard loaded the wounded first, moving with a limp that looked permanent. When one man fell off the skid, he went back for him. Of course he did, and hauled him aboard by the webbing of his vest. Only when every survivor was inside did Howard climb in. The crew chief grabbed his arm to help, but Howard waved him off. "Save it for someone who needs it." Then he collapsed. The medics later said he'd lost nearly a third of his blood. He spent weeks in the hospital that, by now, felt like a timeshare. But he lived, again. Reports filtered upward, each one more unbelievable than the last. The citation practically wrote itself. Despite multiple wounds and under intense enemy fire, Sergeant First Class Robert L. Howard repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire to rescue wounded men, direct airstrikes, and repel assaults. This time, there was no border issue, no classification problem. The story was too visible, the witnesses too many. The recommendation went all the way to the top. When they pinned the Medal of Honor on him months later, Howard stood ramrod straight, expression unreadable. Photographers caught him smiling once, but it looked more like embarrassment than pride. To him, the medal was just another weight on the uniform. He'd already buried the men he wanted to share it with. Reporters asked him how it felt to be a hero. He said, "I just did my job." Then he walked off stage and found a quiet corner, away from the noise. Because for Robert Howard, the war wasn't over. Heroes get to rest, soldiers keep working. And if fate had taught him anything by then, it was that surviving wasn't the same as stopping. Hospitals kept trying to civilize Robert Howard. They wrapped him in gauze, plugged him into tubes, and told him to rest. He treated rest like a rumor. The minute he could walk without bleeding on the floor, he was back in an ops tent looking for the next mission. By the end of Vietnam, his body looked like a topographical map of scar tissue. 14 wounds, 8 Purple Hearts, 4 Bronze Stars, 2 Silver Stars, and 1 Medal of Honor. He didn't collect medals. He accumulated evidence that quitting had never been on the table. The Army kept trying to hide him behind desks. He kept finding the nearest door. Comfort, he said, made soldiers soft, and soft got people killed. So he stayed where things exploded. To his men, he was equal parts guardian and thunderstorm. He didn't give pep talks, he gave examples. Stand next to him in a firefight, and you felt braver by proximity. He trained hard because mercy came from preparation, not speeches. The enemy's practicing too, he'd say, drilling them until fatigue blurred the edges of thought. Fear didn't bother him, panic did. He taught men to turn fear into math, ammo, sector, radio, water. Calm was a weapon, and he carried it like one. When chaos hit, he looked bored, as if combat were paperwork he'd already filed. Stories multiplied, Howard dragging the wounded with one arm, arguing with pilots about landing 10 yards closer, fixing jammed rifles with brute force. He never corrected or confirmed them. Silence was his PR department. His humor stayed dark and bone dry. After firefights, he'd shrug, "Not pretty, but it runs." When a medic pushed morphine, he said, "I'll take 2 when the shooting stops." It never really did. He despised ceremony almost as much as bureaucracy. Rank earned him competence he respected. Rank earned by paperwork he ignored. But downward loyalty was sacred. If you were his, he'd fight the war itself to get you home. That kind of leadership bred imitators. Men who served under him taught others the same code. Be early, be quiet, be lethal, be last on the bird. The war ended, at least officially, but Howard didn't. He stayed in uniform, training and mentoring, carrying SOG's lessons into the DNA of every modern special operations unit that followed. New soldiers expecting a legend found instead a plain-spoken Southerner who treated excellence like routine maintenance. When asked what kept him going, he'd shrug. Duty wasn't philosophy, it was attendance. You showed up until the work was done, or you were. Courage, he told one young sergeant, ain't a feeling, it's rent you pay daily. He knew the jungle never really let go. The scars it left were internal as much as skin deep. Sleep came in short installments. Sudden noises made the air thin. He never called it trauma. He called it memory, and he carried it like spare ammo. Uncomfortable, but necessary. By the late 70s, the Army treated him like an institution. He treated the Army like a promise. When younger officers sought advice, he kept it simple. Lead from the front, leave no one behind, and don't mistake survival for success. Robert Howard wasn't fearless, just stubborn enough to keep walking through every kind of fire until the smoke cleared. The war had failed to kill him, and peace never figured out how. As long as he could stand, he worked. As long as he worked, he lived. Because for Robert Howard, motion itself was the proof of life. When the guns finally went quiet, Robert Howard didn't. The Army tried to park him in classrooms and conference rooms, but he kept finding his way back to the field. He wasn't built for lecterns. He was built for men who still needed teaching. Through the 1970s and 80s, he trained soldiers the way he fought, without shortcuts. He ran field courses in sweltering heat, barking instructions from the front, not the sidelines. Younger Green Berets called him the Standard. They'd heard the stories and then found out he was worse, in the best way. Howard expected perfection because combat didn't grade on a curve. He rose through the ranks, eventually a full colonel, but titles never changed his approach. He still carried his own gear and checked every weapon personally. He could terrify you at inspection and have you laughing an hour later over bad coffee. His humor was as dry as his leadership was absolute. You'll thank me when you're old, he'd tell recruits, assuming you lived that long. Howard's world shrank after Vietnam, but never slowed. He spent years visiting hospitals, mentoring wounded veterans, and talking to soldiers who'd seen the same kind of ghosts he had. He told them the truth. There was no fixing it, only learning to carry it without dropping it on someone else. His toughness made him credible. The kindness made him unforgettable. He didn't talk much about medals. When pressed, he'd shrug. They belonged to the men who didn't make it back. To him, heroism wasn't about headlines. It was about completion. You went out with your team and you came back with your team, or you went out again until you did. The classified nature of SOG kept his legend half hidden for decades. Most Americans never heard of him. Among the quiet professionals who did, his name carried the weight of a full drum magazine. He wasn't mythic because he tried to be. He just refused to stop working. In 2009, cancer finally did what bullets, shrapnel, and bureaucracy couldn't. Howard faced it like every other fight, standing up, looking it in the eye, and not flinching. When the end came, he was buried at Arlington, among the men he'd spent a lifetime trying to keep alive. Soldiers who trained under him came from every corner of the country to watch the flag fold. No speeches, no theatrics, just silence. The kind Howard respected most. One sergeant major summed it up quietly. He taught us what right looked like. Today his story lives in the muscle memory of the Army he shaped. Every time a team sergeant checks his gear twice, every time a wounded man refuses to stay down, every time someone leads from the front instead of from behind, there's a little of Robert Howard in it. He didn't romanticize war, but he didn't apologize for doing his job either. You fight hard, he once said, because someone has to. That was his gospel, simple, unforgiving, and true. The history books might never give him the same spotlight as the generals or politicians, but among the soldiers who know, his shadow is long. He was the man the war couldn't kill and peace couldn't quiet, a professional in a world full of amateurs. Robert L. Howard didn't survive Vietnam. He simply refused to die in it. And that refusal, carried forward by the men he trained, is still marching. I'm Dave. I appreciate you watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And until next time, stand tall.